Imagine a world where the hero, once destined to protect humanity, turns against it, killing every loved one he ever had. The devoted lady who worshipped him, the mage who fought by his side, the princess who entrusted him with her kingdom, the priestess who dedicated everything to aid him, and the woman who loved him more than anything in the world. They all fell by his hand, all for the sake of defeating the demon lord and saving the world. What he didn't know was that his journey wasn't over. He would be sent back in time, before the tragedy unfolded, and granted a mysterious system. This system gave him a new role, a false villain. He must now pretend to be the world's enemy, while secretly working to save it. This time, he has the chance to rewrite fate, not just to save the world, but, more importantly, to protect the people he loves. Now let's get into the main story. I hope I hooked you. 10 years ago, in a kingdom adorned with golden palaces that stretched as far as the eye could see, there lived a little boy named Frey. One day, he turned to his father and asked, "What are these glowing, warm-like characters?" His father, a tall and robust man with hair as crimson as the setting sun, smiled and replied, "These are called kana. Only those descended from the hero family Starlight are able to read them." With a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, Frey's father led him to the entrance of a mysterious dungeon. The passageway shimmered with blue text that illuminated the entire doorway. Frey hesitated, looking up at his father. "What about you, father? Won't you come inside with me?" His father knelt to meet his gaze and said firmly, "Frey, you must be strong. You've heard of the prophecies spreading throughout the kingdom, haven't you?" "Yes, father," Frey nodded. "It speaks of a day, 1,000 years after the demon lord vanished, when their successor will rise to consume the world. But at the same time, a new hero shall emerge to save it." Frey paused, his voice filled with both awe and uncertainty. "It's about the world left behind by our ancestors, the ones who defeated the demon lord, right?" His father gave him a solemn nod, his expression unreadable. "That's right. This is the prophecy told by the Empire. But there's more to it, something that has only been passed down within our family." Frey stared at his father in surprise, his young mind racing to make sense of the moment. His father continued, his tone growing heavier. "The prophecy speaks not only of the successor to the demon lord and the new hero who will rise to face them. It also foretells that this moment will come precisely 1,000 years after the demon lord was defeated. And that time is now." Frey's father leaned closer, his face serious, his gaze so intense that it almost frightened the little boy standing before him. Our protagonist, Frey, stepped into the room alone. The air felt heavy, and the darkness swallowed everything around him. He couldn't see a thing until, suddenly, the room was bathed in a glowing blue light, illuminating the entire space. Frey yelped in fear, instinctively screaming for his father. But after a moment, he managed to calm himself. As his eyes adjusted, he glanced around in awe. This can't be," he whispered, his voice trembling. Drawn toward the source of the light, Frey approached a table at the center of the room. His heart raced as he saw it. The legendary sword of the hero, resting on a pedestal. The blade radiated an otherworldly aura, its energy so powerful that it caused Frey's hair to ripple as though caught in a strong wind. His eyes widened in astonishment, his mouth agape. "Is this the legendary sword of the hero?" Frey murmured, hardly believing what he was seeing. Just then, a tall man appeared out of nowhere, as if stepping from the shadows themselves. His hair was darker than charcoal, and he exuded an air of casual confidence. "Stop," the man said abruptly, his voice calm but commanding. "That sword is too much for you." Frey jumped in fear, nearly stumbling backward. "Who are you?" he shouted, his voice a mix of panic and indignation. "I was alone in here a second ago. Where did you come from?" The man's expression darkened with irritation. "Don't you even recognize the face of your own ancestor?" Frey tilted his head, staring at the man. "That's really weird," he muttered, thinking out loud. "I thought our ancestors were supposed to be really handsome. Like, weren't they supposed to be really handsome?" The man's expression twitched, and his irritation grew. He muttered under his breath, his voice rumbling low. "This brat." Then, with a glare, he said aloud, "I'll send you home if you keep this up." Taking a deep breath to calm himself, The man folded his arms. Anyway, you came here because you want to learn how to conquer this world, right? Frey blinked, his confusion evident. Conquer? No. I only came here because my dad said I should. He said it would help me protect my friends. The man raised an eyebrow and smirked slightly. That does include conquering, so he wasn't exactly lying. He just didn't tell you the whole truth. He leaned closer, his tone shifting to something more serious. For now, just listen. The world you live in might be in hard mode, but that doesn't mean it's doomed to a bad ending. He grabbed the chain around his neck, the light reflecting off the metal as he began explaining the situation in simple terms, trying to make it easier for Frey to understand. But Frey's puzzled expression didn't change. He squinted, his head tilting slightly. Hard mode? Bad ending? What are you even talking about? The man sighed heavily, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. You're not getting it, are you? He stared at the boy for a long moment before finally giving up. Fine. You'll just have to see it for yourself. Without warning, the man reached out, his hand brushing against Frey's face. Frey flinched, letting out a startled scream as his eyes rolled back into his head. His body stiffened, and a chilling energy surged through him. This, the man said in a grim tone, is what the world looks like if you take the wrong route. A devastating wave of images flooded Frey's mind, so vivid it felt as though he was there himself. He saw demons soaring through the skies, laying waste to everything below. A figure wreathed in flames, with crimson as deep as blood, incinerated the world with merciless power. Orcs and high goblins rampaged across the land, destroying everything in their path. Humans, insects, and animals alike. Nothing was safe. The visions grew more harrowing as they focused on Frey's loved ones. He saw them fall, one by one, meeting agonizing ends. And then, as if the torment weren't enough, he saw his own death, painful and inevitable. A voice shattered the silence in his mind. Do you see it now? This is the world that has fallen into despair, the man said, his tone cold and unrelenting. Frey collapsed to his hands and knees, gasping desperately for air. Sweat dripped from his brow, and his heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of what he had just witnessed. Agony clawed at his soul, tears streaming freely down his face. The man observed the boy with a somber expression, muttering to himself, I don't blame him. He's just a child. How could he face the loss of everything he holds dear? But the question is, will he be strong enough? I need to know what he'll choose. Through the pain and despair, Frey clenched his fists. His voice, shaky yet resolute, broke the silence. I'll show you just like my ancestors did. I will protect this world, and the people I love. The man's eyes widened in amazement before a faint smile crossed his lips. I almost forgot, this boy is a hero too. His tone shifted, now carrying both respect and gravity. Very well then, I'll show you the only path to a happy ending. But listen closely, this road is not an easy one. To save this world and those you love, you'll have to destroy it with your own hands. You'll need to sacrifice everything, including yourself, to defeat the Demon King. He paused, his voice growing more serious. And once you enter the hidden route, a new challenge will await. But no matter what, you must not falter, little one. Fast forward to the present day. Frey stood alone, reflecting on the past. His expression was distant as he muttered to himself, I've finally made it onto the path to the happy ending. He sighed, his gaze turning sharp. But things haven't been the same. There's only one difference now, the system. A faint glow appeared before him, and a blue screen with a loading symbol materialized, displaying, updating, 66%. Frey stood silently, his gaze fixed on the glowing system screen before him. This feels so familiar, he muttered to himself, his thoughts drifting back to the prophecy he had seen as a child. The screen displayed, updating, 66%. Penalties are currently inactive. Only emergency protection skills are active. Frey thought to himself, if it works like this, then maybe I can handle it, even if it's my first time using it. Turning toward the window, he stared out at the scenery beyond. A chill ran down his spine. This is just like the images my ancestors showed me. His hand tightened into a fist. If I use the system wisely, if I can manage it until the end, I'll be able to save everyone. I have to. Before he could finish his train of thought, a knock came at the door. A soft, gentle voice called out from the other side. Young master, it's Kania. May I come in? Frey's expression brightened instantly, a rare smile gracing his face. Yeah, go ahead. Come in, he called out eagerly. It had been so long since he'd seen her, his childhood friend, the person who had always been by his side. Frey's heart swelled with relief and happiness. I've gone through so much just to get to this point, he thought. I should be able to take it easy for a while. At least, I can be happy to see her smile again. Just then, the system chimed again. Updating, 100%. A sudden flash of red illuminated the room, followed by a piercing warning. Warning. The main heroines have returned with their past memories. Frey froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. What? He thought, his mind racing. What did it just say? The door creaked open, and Kania stepped inside. Please excuse me, she said softly, bowing gracefully before him. Frey's heart clenched. Something was wrong. The air around her felt different, heavy. In her eyes, her gaze pierced through him with an unmistakable intensity. It was killing intent. Before Frey could react, the system flashed again, its ominous warning repeating, Warning. The 5 main heroines have returned with their past memories. Frey's thoughts spiraled into chaos. What did it just say? How could something this ridiculous even happen? In your previous life, you chose to commit evil acts that would destroy the world. In this life, however, you are forced to commit evil acts by a system. If your good deeds are discovered, you suffer a severe penalty. Your vitality will be significantly reduced. This restriction is necessary to clear the hidden routes set by the system. A series of status windows flashed before your eyes. System update complete. Status allocation. Item shop. Not yet open. Skill shop. Current balance of false evil points. 100 points. The system allows you to buy whatever you need using points accumulated from acts deemed evil by its parameters. Then, a new alert appeared. Emergency activation. The 5 main heroines have retained their memories from the previous timeline. Sweat dripped down the protagonist's face as he stared at the flashing panels. I didn't know any of this would happen, he muttered, panic rising in his voice. From behind, a soft but unnervingly chilling voice spoke. It was Kania, his loyal butler. Then, please excuse me, she said, her tone laced with an almost tangible killing intent. The protagonist's heart pounded. What an intense killing intent, he thought. He could feel it shaking the very fiber of his being. Kania, his trusted companion, had been born with dark mana that constantly drained her life force. Despite this, she served him faithfully in the past, until now. She was one of the 5 heroines foretold in the prophecy. If she retained her memories from the previous timeline, then a flashback surfaced in his mind. In the past timeline, he had been cruel to her. He recalled handing her a pen with a disdainful sneer. What's so praiseworthy about not having parents? He had mocked. You look like you want to be tossed out too. He had then kicked her to the ground, watching as she crumbled and cried. Now, standing in front of her, he began to panic. It wouldn't be strange for her to try to kill me at any moment, he thought. The tension in the air was palpable, and every instinct screamed at him to act. But how could he? The system's restrictions and her haunting memories left him with no clear path forward. The protagonist clenched his fists, unsure if his next move would be one of survival, redemption, or further descent into the role of the false villain. Kania asked, Young master, would you like me to bring you a meal? The protagonist, sitting on the bed and trying to relax after the overwhelming events, responded, Just give me the usual. Kania's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, a faint smile seemed to flicker on her face. She bowed and said, Yes, as you wish, before turning and walking out. The door slammed shut behind her with a resounding bang. The protagonist began to shiver, his body trembling as sweat dripped down his face. He couldn't control his thoughts. That cold gaze of hers, there's no doubt about it. She remembers the past. I don't know what's going on, but I should prepare myself for her. Before he could finish his thought, a system screen appeared before him again. Emergency activation. Emergency activation. Frustrated, he yelled out loud. What is it this time? The system screen displayed. Ability acquired. False villain's intuition. Description: you sense very strong killing intent nearby. The protagonist muttered to himself, I already felt that earlier. What's the point of the system? Another screen appeared. Skill acquired. False villain's intuition level 1. You are able to detect threats that could lead to your death once a day. He stared at the message, realization dawning on him. The skill is talking about Kania. But if she kills me, her master, she wouldn't be able to get away with it. Does she want to kill me so much that she doesn't even care about her own situation? As the door creaked open, a red, smoky mist began to envelop the room. Kania entered, pushing a cart with a tray on top, covered by a silver platter. I have brought you some soup, young master, she said, her voice calm and steady. The platter couldn't mask the strange aroma emanating from the dish. A purple, poisonous mist filled the air. Although it didn't harm either of them, the ominous atmosphere was unmistakable. The protagonist's thoughts raced. I see. She plans to feed me food laced with black magic and have me die under mysterious circumstances so she won't be traced back to it. Kania bowed as she presented the plate of soup. Please enjoy your meal, she said. The protagonist thought to himself, since she's retained her memories from the past, I must look like the worst trash to her. It can't be helped. I guess I have to start from here. Before Kania could leave, the protagonist abruptly stood up and shouted, Who the hell told you to bring me soup? Hurry up and bring me a damn sandwich instead. His voice was filled with anger and frustration, his face contorted with fear. Suddenly, he hurled the plate past her head, barely missing her. Kania's eyes widened in astonishment, clearly not expecting such a reaction. For a moment, she seemed shaken but quickly regained her composure. Bowing again, she said, I shall prepare something immediately, young master. She turned and left, slamming the door shut behind her. A system notification chimed with a ding. +1 false evil point. The protagonist stood there, breathing heavily, his mind a whirlwind of panic and resolve. This is going to be harder than I thought. A few minutes later, Kania returned to the room. Young master, I brought the sandwich, just as you ordered, she said, pushing another cart in. The aroma wafting from the sandwich was eerily similar to the soup from before. In an effort to avoid revealing that he knew she was trying to poison him, the protagonist stated, I don't see any cheese in there. Make the sandwich again. Kania hesitated, her lips parting as if to protest. But before she could utter a word, he snapped, Are you trying to talk back to me right now? A sweat appeared on her brow as she stammered, And no, young master. Bowing her head, she turned to leave and prepare another sandwich. When she returned, he examined it briefly before declaring, The bread is too dry. Make it again. The system chimed. +1 false evil point. Each time she came back with a new sandwich, he found a new fault. The system continued to chime. +1 false evil point. +1 false evil point. +1 false evil point. Finally, after several rounds, he yelled in frustration, Make it again, and collapsed back onto his bed. By the 8th attempt, Kania presented yet another sandwich, her voice trembling. A sandwich, just as you ordered, young master. The protagonist sighed internally. She really is a tedious girl, even though I made her redo it over and over again to exhaust her magic. He reached for the sandwich, pretending to take a bite, but stopped short as he looked at her. Her face, though weary, held a faint smile, and her eyes sparkled like diamonds in the night sky. For a moment he faltered, then declared, You know what? Let's just go with the soup from before. Make it again. Kania's body seemed to sag with frustration. Kneeling on the floor, she began to lose consciousness, her strength drained. Just as she was about to collapse, the protagonist caught her. Smiling faintly, he murmured, How ironic. I just wanted to spend a little time laughing with you again. I never thought that earning points would be so life-threatening for you. He hesitated, then placed a hand over her, glowing red and neon-colored health indicators appearing from his body. For now, I need to replenish your life force before anything bad happens to you, he muttered. But there's only one way to stabilize it, dark matter. I'll have to forcefully transfer my life force to you. As the energy flowed from him to Kania, he whispered, I won't live long anyway, so I might as well give you what I can. I need to make good use of you to survive. When the transfer was complete, he collapsed onto the bed, exhausted. I'm finished for now. I need to figure out what to do with this ridiculous situation. It doesn't seem like everything is going according to plan. Lying on the bed, he thought to himself, there are only 2 months left until the main quest begins. I had planned to keep a low profile until then to avoid being found out. But this ridiculous situation happened right at the start. This system needs to give me a break. His eyes shifted to Kania, now sleeping peacefully on his bed. There are still 4 other main heroines I need to deal with. Luckily, I don't have to worry about my fiancée since she's traveling for now. The princess is currently being pressured by the imperial family, so she's powerless to interfere. But the truly troublesome ones are the priestess and the archmage. They're the ones I'll most likely encounter at the academy. He thought of the saintess, Ferloche. She's a naive idiot being manipulated by the cult, but one wrong move could socially destroy me. And then there was Irina. She's even worse. She doesn't think about the consequences of her actions. She might kill me as soon as she sees me. His gaze returned to Kania. Even my little butler here, but as long as I hold her sister hostage, she'll avoid trying to kill me openly. Determined, he resolved, I have to accumulate more false evil points. If I don't get stronger or find something to protect myself with, one of these 5 will kill me very soon. The points I can get from Kania alone are limited. It's risky, but the more people I come into contact with, the faster I can accumulate points. If I use the information from the Book of Prophecy, I should be able to cover myself to some extent. I'll try to finish arranging things tomorrow. The real challenge begins at the academy. The next morning, the protagonist sat on the floor, exhausted from reading the Book of Prophecy all night. Slouched against the side of his bed, he turned to look at his little butler, who was still asleep. She should be waking up soon, he muttered to himself. With a deep breath, he picked her up and unceremoniously tossed her onto the floor. Wiping the sweat from his brow, he thought, she's surprisingly heavy for someone so slight. Preparing to get into character, he took another deep breath and yelled, Are you planning to sleep all day? His fury seemed to radiate from him, and his teeth sharpened momentarily, resembling those of a dragon. The sudden outburst startled the little butler awake, causing her to let out a screech. As she regained her composure and turned to face him, her expression spoke volumes. It didn't require words. She couldn't help but wonder if her master had just defiled her dignity. He stared at her and sneered. Do you have a complaint or something? If it weren't for me, you'd be lazing around all day. Turning his gaze to the window, he added, Today is the first day at the academy, isn't it? Hurry up and get the carriage ready. The butler, her tone now calm and professional, replied, Understood. She dusted off her clothes, opened the door, and walked out. As soon as the door closed behind her, the protagonist sighed and opened the system interface. Still just 100 points, huh? The system screen displayed. Please choose one of the following options. Status allocation. Item shop. Not yet open. Skill shop. Currently accumulated false evil points. 100. He frowned, deep in thought. It looks like I'll need a few hundred points to buy anything useful. At this rate, he stared out the window, watching his little butler bustling about. Well, he muttered, I guess I'll have to earn them bit by bit to avoid getting killed. With a tired sigh, he leaned back. An academy life filled with people trying to kill me. Sounds like it's going to be so enjoyable. His voice dripped with sarcasm, his face a mix of exhaustion and resignation as he braced himself for what lay ahead. Later that evening, a group of students gathered, pouring drinks and toasting to the protagonist. That was such a moving speech you gave at the opening ceremony, one of the students exclaimed, raising his glass. The protagonist forced a smile and replied, You think so? You seem like someone who knows what they're talking about. His tone was layered with false flattery. Another student, a young man with slick black hair, added, It's only natural that the freshman representative would hail from the most powerful duke's family in the empire. A girl with bright yellow hair chimed in, You're absolutely amazing, young master. Everything about you is just perfect. The protagonist, sipping from his glass to suppress his irritation, replied, Of course. My intelligence and looks are unmatched, after all. Inside, however, he seethed. All of you are like a pack of hyenas, circling me with fake smiles. I can see your true intentions from a mile away. The black-haired boy leaned closer and spoke in a hushed tone. To show our sincerity, We've arranged for some of our family's merchandise to be displayed at the Imperial Palace. As a token of our goodwill, we've also prepared some entertainment for you. Commoner women, handpicked for your enjoyment. Please, take a look and make your choice. The protagonist's face betrayed a flicker of surprise. Did he really just say that out loud? He thought. Deciding to play along, he smirked and said, I'll judge your sincerity after I've had my share. Internally, his thoughts churned. Do these people have nothing in their heads besides women and money? They're completely rotten. I should do something about these nobles someday. But for now, I have to stick with them if I want to keep earning points. A familiar chime echoed in his mind. Ding! False evil points plus 10. In the background, the black-haired boy's voice rang out. Do you know how to listen, woman? Are you just arrogant? A muffled cry followed. Please, let me go, one of the women pleaded. The boy dragged her forward, ignoring her struggles. Shut up and get over here, he barked, before turning to the protagonist. He threw one of the girls onto the ground and grabbed another by her hair. Here, I brought them for you. One of the girls, with bright red hair as vivid as fire, struggled against him. Let go of me, she screamed, her voice fierce and defiant. The protagonist's eyes widened in recognition. His breath hitched, and he muttered in disbelief. Irina. Sweat dripped down his face as he took in her disheveled appearance. Her crimson hair was a mess, her cheeks were flushed, and her clothes were tattered and dirty. Yet, despite her condition, her fiery spirit burned in her gaze. No, this can't be possible, he thought, his mind racing. Irina Filliard? She's a genius with fire magic. Someone who can use every type of elemental magic. There's no way these fools could have captured her. Did she? His heart sank. Did she get caught on purpose? To kill me right here? He quickly summoned the system screen. System store. Information search. Level 1, 30 points. Emergency safeguard. 70 points. Mind reading. Level 1, 150 points. His eyes locked onto the emergency safeguard option. The description read, protects the user from one fatal attack. Can hold up to 3 safeguards at a time. This is it, he muttered. The points I earned from my butler yesterday are finally paying off. Another chime brought a new notification. Irina Filliard. Condition, mana exhaustion. His mind raced again. Mana exhaustion? A genius like her? Is she saving all her mana for a massive attack? On cue, Irina screamed, You bastards aren't going to get away with this. Another girl pleaded, Please, stop this already. The black-haired boy, his face twisted in frustration, yanked harder on their hair. Quiet, you vulgar women. Our protagonist, still seated and glaring at the black-haired boy, spoke in a stern, commanding tone. Get lost. The boy blinked in confusion. What? What did you just say? The protagonist's patience snapped. He repeated louder. I said, get lost. I'm going to enjoy myself with these women. So why don't you get out already? To emphasize his frustration, he threw his drink to the ground, shattering the glass. The black-haired boy and his companion, trembling at the sudden outburst, stammered simultaneously, Why yes, sir. Without wasting another second, they hurriedly retreated, muttering, Please, enjoy yourself, sir. The room fell silent, except for the shallow breathing of the 2 girls left behind. The protagonist turned his gaze to Irina and said smoothly, Now, how about we find a quieter place to enjoy ourselves? Irina glared at him, her fiery spirit unbroken. Just how far are you planning to go, you vile bastard? If I knew things would turn out like this, I would have used my ultimate magic on you instead of the Demon King's army. The protagonist tilted his head in mock confusion, stepping closer. What are you talking about? Maybe I should start by fixing that sharp tongue of yours. He reached out as if to touch her. Irina's eyes burned with indignation. Damn it. To think I'd get caught like this before midnight. A single tear slipped down her face. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for what was to come. When she reopened the moments later, she found the protagonist collapsed on the ground. Her thoughts raced. Did he drink too much and pass out? The other girl, having freed herself from the binds, rushed to Irina's side. Let's get out of here. He's drunk and unconscious. We're lucky. Terrible things happen to girls who get caught by nobles like them. Without hesitation, the 2 fled the room. The protagonist cracked an eye open and sighed in relief. Good thing they left, he muttered. Although I did scare them off with my superb acting, it was only possible because I used the emergency safeguard skill. A familiar system chime echoed in his mind. Ding! Drunkards belong in the trash. As the clock struck midnight, another notification appeared. Ding! Emergency safeguard successfully used. Target: Irina Filliard. Details: the 12 o'clock curse. The 12 o'clock curse condemns the target to death at midnight the day after it is cast. It can only be used once a year. The caster suffers from mana exhaustion for 1 year. The protagonist exhaled deeply, slouching against the wall. That was way too close. Just then, Kania, his loyal butler, entered the room. Young master, she said coolly, looking down at him. Frey chuckled weakly. Oh, it's just you, Kania. Eh? Her expression remained stern. You can't sleep in a place like this, she said, bending down to help him up. I can't walk right now, he whined. Carry me, Kania. She sighed, her patience wearing thin. His finger prodded her cheek playfully as he teased her, causing her to snap. Her voice turned cold. It would be nice if you behaved like this all the time, wouldn't it? Frey leaned his head back as she carried him. Sigh. I feel like I'm just trying to please a king. Whatever. He pushed the thought aside. Might as well boost her life force while I'm at it, he murmured. Without Kania noticing, a faint glow seeped from Frey into her, replenishing her strength. Her eyes darkened, her tone shifting to something icy. Frey, you're still as scummy as ever. If it weren't for you, my sister, and I would have killed you by now. Her words triggered a rush of memories in Frey's mind. He recalled a little girl presenting him with a crown she had made. Another memory surfaced of 2 girls warning him not to climb a tree. It's too dangerous, they pleaded, but he brushed them off, saying, It's fine. It's only a little further. The next memory showed him injured in bed after falling from that tree. One of the girls sat by his side, crying, as he reassured her. I'll be fine. See? I'm healing already. Finally, he remembered tying a red bow on Kania's shirt as she protested, flushed and embarrassed. Young master, I can do this myself, she said. He had smiled back then, replying, It's fine. It's fine. More importantly, calling me young master feels so distant. Just call me by my name, okay? The memories faded, and he found himself back in the present. Kania carried him silently, finishing her earlier thought. Just you wait. Once I ensure my sister's safety, I'll stop your breathing for good. Previously, Frey narrowly avoided death by using a system shield item to block a fatal blow from the fierce and stunning Irina. Now, battered and drained, he's being escorted back to his room by his ever-dutiful butler, who is less than amused by him. Later that night, as their carriage stopped in front of the student dormitory, Kania, the butler, turned to her young master. Young master, we've arrived, she said softly. The protagonist, half asleep, lazily waved her away with his hand. You can go now. Kania bowed but didn't leave. Straightening up, she looked him in the eye and said, I will also be staying here from today onward. The protagonist bolted upright on his bed, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. What? You're joking, right? Her expression remained unreadable. The Duke has instructed me to keep an eye on you, young master. Should you attempt to dismiss me, the Duke has also ensured you'll be expelled. His eyes widened in disbelief. He stared at her, dumbfounded, as the weight of her words settled in. He barely registered her setting up a neat bed on the floor before finally processing what she'd said. Turning inward, he opened the system screen to make sense of the situation. 3 potential game over conditions appeared before him. Expulsion or inability to attend the academy without a justifiable reason. Death of any main heroine. Death of the protagonist in any scenario outside the final battle. He glanced at Kania as she tucked herself in a bed. She gave him a curt good night, young master, before closing her eyes. Frowning deeply, the protagonist lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Protect my life, my classmates, and manage all this nonsense? This is absurd. This game is impossible. But he sighed, knowing that complaints wouldn't change his situation. The next morning, the soft chirping of birds filled the room as sunlight spilled in through the windows. Kania stood beside her young master's bed, bowing slightly. Young master, you'll be late if you don't wake up soon, she said in a neutral tone. He groaned and rolled over, attempting to swat her away. Like I care. I'm sleeping more, he muttered, still drained from the previous night's revelations. Unfazed, Kania turned and walked toward the door. Then I'll leave first, she said sharply, reaching for the handle. Hearing her words, he bolted upright. Wait, why are you deciding that on your own? He called after her. Before she could respond, he doubled over, coughing violently. Cough, cough. The sound grew harsher, wet and ragged, until blood spilled from his mouth, staining the sheets. Damn it, he thought, panic rising in his chest. Did I give too much of my life force to her yesterday? Kania turned back, her eyes narrowing slightly as she spoke. Are you all right, young masters? Her tone was indifferent, though a faint note of concern lingered. It's nothing, he rasped, wiping his mouth. Don't mind it. By the way, when did I ever say you could go ahead of me? He pointed at her, his voice sharp with frustration. Snatching a fountain pen from her shirt pocket, he held it up. You're just like this pen. Do you think it can move on its own? If you got a problem, leave. I'll just take your sister as my mistress instead. With that, he flung the pen, sending it clattering across the room. Kania froze, her body trembling. Tears welled in her eyes, her flushed cheeks streaked with sorrow. I apologize, she stammered, her voice breaking. At the very least, please spare my sister. Before she could finish, he leaned in close, his voice mocking. Are you crying? He sneered. It's about your precious little sister, after all. If you understand, don't get any more strange ideas. He patted her shoulder roughly, almost condescendingly. Know your place, and everything will be fine, he added as he walked past her. The system chimed in his mind. Ding. False evil points +10. Threatening someone's family is going too far. Behind him, Kania knelt to pick up the pen. As her fingers closed around it, a memory flashed through her mind, her younger sister handing her the pen, smiling brightly. Here you go. Think of this pen as me, and treasure it, okay? The memory brought a faint blush to Kania's face. She clutched the pen tightly, holding on to the happiness of that moment. As she turned back to the bed to straighten up, her eyes widened at the sight of a bloody handprint on the sheets. Her thoughts raced. Did the young master have some kind of chronic illness in the past? She frowned, trying to recall any similar incidents, but came up blank. The morning light shone through the window as she stared at the crimson stain, her concern growing despite herself. Evening classes began. Later that evening, the students gathered in their assigned seats, sitting upright and attentive. A strikingly beautiful teacher with flowing, lustrous hair stood at the front of the classroom. She introduced herself in a commanding voice. I am Isekai Bywaker, she said, her piercing gaze sweeping across the room. I will be your instructor for the first year. Just as she began her introduction, the door creaked open, and the protagonist entered alongside his butler, both late. Iselet's eyes narrowed. You too. You're late. Her voice boomed, reverberating through the room. I'm deducting 10 points as a penalty. The protagonist clicked his tongue, muttering under his breath to Kania. Seriously, this is your fault for dawdling. Before he could take his seat, a voice from across the room rang out, catching everyone's attention. You, why are you here? It was Irina, the red-haired mage from the night before. Her outburst left the class murmuring in confusion. The protagonist froze momentarily, his teeth gritting and his eyes wide. No comment, he muttered, quickly turning away and sliding into his seat. Iselet resumed her lesson, her tone sharp. Enough interruptions. Let's continue. Meanwhile, Irina glared daggers at him, her mind racing. How is he alive? My magic was flawless. Could he be one of the Demon King's lackeys all along? She bit her nails, frustration and confusion clear on her face. Please refrain from private conversations, Iselet snapped, her chalk scraping against the board. The protagonist slouched in his seat, his expression bored. Why do we even have classes on the first day? He muttered, ignoring the cold, piercing stare he felt from the silver-haired priestess, Ferloche, seated nearby. As the class concluded, Iselet announced, That's the end of our first lesson. We'll move outside for combat training next. Before the protagonist could leave, a hand tapped him on the shoulder. He turned to find Frey smiling at him. Frey-sama, she said sweetly. He frowned, wary. Why is she talking to me? I'd like to offer you my blessings, she continued. If you don't mind sparing a moment, preferably somewhere private. His instincts screamed at him. Frey? What is she plotting? The system chimed in his head. Warning. False feelings intuition activated. You sense strong killing intent nearby. The protagonist smirked internally. A bit too obvious, aren't we? Looking her in the eye, he said flatly, I decline. Her face fell, clearly not expecting this response. But my blessings can't be bought with money, she stammered, trying to recover. Like I said, he replied, turning away, I don't need it. Flicking her off dismissively, he walked out, leaving her stunned. Frey shrieked in disbelief, tears welling up in her eyes. Watching her sob quietly, the protagonist sighed. Being too pure is its own curse. She's just going to end up being used by the church again. Combat training. Out in the training yard, Isolate stood before the students, her sword glinting in the fading sunlight. Order everyone, she barked. Our second lesson is combat training. Line up. As the students assembled in neat rows, Isolate stabbed her sword into the ground. One by one, step forward. You'll duel me. The first student approached hesitantly, gripping his sword tightly. Before he could even raise it, Isolate blurred forward. With a single precise strike, she knocked his weapon out of his hand, sending it clattering to the ground. Pathetic, she remarked coldly. Next, one by one, students faced her, and one by one, they were swiftly defeated. A mage tried to cast Fireball, but Isolate dodged effortlessly and taunted. That looks more like a sparkler than a spell. The protagonist watched from the sidelines, sitting beside Kania. He smirked faintly. Man, I can still feel her killing intent, he muttered, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. Next, Isolate called, her voice sharp. Kania stood, her eyes narrowing as she stepped forward. Oh, it's her turn, the protagonist said, leaning back lazily. Isolate sized Kania up. Ready? Yes, Kania replied calmly, magic beginning to swirl faintly around her. Isolate launched herself forward with the same speed and precision as before. But Kania raised her hand, gathering the wind into a concentrated barrier. Isolate's sword struck the barrier with a resounding clang, the force reverberating through the air. Without missing a beat, Kania countered, creating another shield of wind to deflect Isolate's follow-up strikes. Their battle became a blur of magic and swordplay, each exchange growing fiercer. From the sidelines, the protagonist watched, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Kania, he muttered. Unbeknownst to her, he was secretly channeling his life force into her from afar, boosting her endurance. But the strain on him was beginning to show. How long are you planning to keep this up? He groaned, clutching his chest. The fight continued unabated, both combatants locked in an intense struggle. The protagonist could feel his energy draining rapidly. This is too much. I have to stop her before I collapse. Isolate, the teacher, crossed her arms and smirked at Kania, the protagonist's butler. You lasted much longer than I expected. Let's see how far you can really go. Before the teacher could press further, Kania canceled the swirling magic in her hands. She raised them into the air, signaling her surrender. I'll stop here, she said calmly. Isolate raised an eyebrow. Why? Kania bowed slightly in respect. I was born with unstable mana. If I push too far, it could go berserk. The teacher's stern expression softened slightly. So that's why you moved so cautiously. How unfortunate. You have the potential to become a powerful mage. As Isolate stepped back to prepare for the next duel, the protagonist sighed in relief, sweat dripping from his face. Thank God. I thought I was going to pass out from all the life force I was transferring to her. The next student was Irina, the red-haired mage. She approached the teacher confidently, but was swiftly defeated with a single move. She collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. This one's not even worth mentioning, Isolate said, shaking her head. Someone take her to the nurse's office. A black-haired girl rushed to Irina's side, shouting, Irina, are you all right? But Irina had already fainted, drooling as exhaustion overtook her. When it was Frey's turn, the silver-haired priestess, she hesitated. Can I skip my turn? She asked. Isolate frowned. Why? Frloche lowered her gaze. It feels wrong to use my powers against you. Isolate's smirk returned. Skipping will not reflect well on you. I understand, Frloche said with a nod, stepping back into the crowd. Isolate turned her gaze to the protagonist. Now, for the last match of the day, all eyes shifted to him. The students murmured in anticipation, wondering how the duel would unfold. The protagonist walked forward with a smirk, adjusting the pendant on his collar. It was shaped like a cartoonish skull and emitted faint pink lightning sparks. This is such a tedious thing, he said to Isolate. Tell me, is it fun playing the passionate teacher? Isolate's eyes narrowed. And you? Is it fun pretending to be a noble? Come at me. I'll take this chance to fix that rotten character of yours. The protagonist dashed forward, his blade clashing against Isolate's with unexpected force. Isolate gritted her teeth, clearly caught off guard. Looks like this pendant was worth every coin, the protagonist thought, smirking. The pendant, an artifact he had acquired from the black market, temporarily boosted his strength. You're surprised by just this much? He taunted, unleashing a powerful slash. The force of the attack blew Isolate back, her boots skidding against the dirt. Isolate retaliated with swift, precise strikes, but the protagonist infused his sword with aura, sending dual energy waves her way. Isolate narrowly dodged, wincing as one attack grazed her. The students gasped. Unbelievable. He's pushing the teacher this hard. As the fight raged, the protagonist delivered a final blow, disarming Isolate. Her sword clattered to the ground, and the duel ended in his favor. Before anyone could react, Frloche shouted, That pendant! It's radiating demonic energy. She really is a snitch. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the protagonist, as Frloche approached with a smug expression. What's this? The protagonist said mockingly. Want to inspect it? Frloche reached for the pendant, but as her holy magic touched it, the artifact reacted violently. A red mist emanated from its skull-shaped eyes and mouth, accompanied by an eerie screech. The students erupted in whispers. The son of a duke is using black magic, one exclaimed. As expected of an artifact that costs as much as a mansion, another murmured. The system chimed in the protagonist's head, plus 2,000 points added to your balance. Reason, the fearless villain's entrance. The protagonist chuckled inwardly. 2,000 points? Mischief pays off. Isolate stormed into her office, followed by the protagonist. She slammed the door shut and glared at him. How dare you bring an illegal black magic artifact into the academy, she shouted. You're overreacting, he replied nonchalantly. It's just one item. Isolate's voice softened, tinged with disappointment. What happened to you? You weren't like this before? A system window appeared before the protagonist, displaying Isolate's mental state. Isolate's mental state. Angry, disappointed, worried, regretful, pity. She's worried about me, the protagonist thought, but his expression remained cold. I've just adapted to the ways of the world, he said. Only a fool tries to live an honest life. Isolate sighed deeply. Fine. Since this is your first offense, I'll let you off with a warning. The protagonist smirked. That's more like it. Though I feel cheated, this pendant wasn't cheap. However, Isolate added sharply, on one condition. You'll take me to the store where you bought it. I'm going to destroy everything in it. The protagonist blinked in surprise, then grinned. Great plan. Let's go tomorrow. I need to pick something up anyway. Isolate pressed a hand to her temple in frustration. We're not going shopping. Ignoring her, the protagonist waved as he left. You're so fussy. See you tomorrow. As the door closed, Isolate sighed, staring into the distance. Why have you changed so much? Returning to his room, the protagonist found Kania playing with a stuffed black cat. Welcome back, master, she said cheerfully. I forgot you were here, he muttered, sighing. Oh, this is a stuffed cat my sister gave me. Isn't it cute? Turning away to hide his expression, he said, ridiculous. It's way too cute, he thought. Enough of that. Just go to bed, he barked. Yes, good night, she replied, lying down. Once Kania was sound asleep, the protagonist rose, checking her breathing. I'll need to replenish her life force for tomorrow, he muttered. Unbeknownst to him, the stuffed cat watched silently, its eyes glowing faintly, recording everything. The black cat watched intently as the main character inspected the unconscious girl. Its eyes glowed faintly with a purple light, capturing and recording the entire scene. The main character, oblivious to the cat's presence, muttered, "You're asleep, aren't you?" He waved his hand in front of the girl's face to confirm her state. Suddenly, a voice, soft yet familiar, emanated from the cat. It was the little butler girl, speaking to herself through the feline. The fact that Frey started vomiting blood so suddenly is suspicious. I kept an eye on him all day, and he didn't do anything out of the ordinary, but the scene shifted briefly to earlier that day. The little butler girl concentrated, dark mana swirling around her hand. With a faint pop, a small black cat materialized. It became clear that the cat was a magical creation, linked directly to her. Smirking, she muttered, "He's definitely going to try something while I'm asleep. Just give up already. I'll catch you red-handed this time." Back in the present, the main character rolled up his sleeves and glanced at the sleeping girl. Completely unaware of the cat's hidden vigilance, he said, "Well, since she's out cold, I guess I'll get started." He carefully lifted her shirt slightly and began channeling his life force into her body. From the cat's perspective, however, the scene appeared far less innocent. The butler girl's voice broke out again in disbelief. "What is this bastard doing? Is he ruining his health staying up late just to do something like this? Ugh, trash. I'm gonna kill him once I wake up. No, once I'm back in my body, I'll make sure to torture him thoroughly first." The cat continued observing as the main character's body began trembling slightly, his face contorting in pain. It hesitated. Why is he shaking like that? He looks like he's suffering. What's he doing with his hand on my stomach? Still, she dismissed the thought with suspicion. No way someone like him is doing anything good. If I just wait, he'll show his true colors. Finally, the main character slumped back with a tired sigh. Phew, that should be enough for today. The cat thought, wait, he's done already? It watched warily as the main character stood up, shaking slightly, and began walking toward it. Panic set in. Did he notice me? A smile suddenly broke across the main character's face as he reached out and picked up the cat. His eyes lit up with joy. Wow, this cat is so soft and so cute, he exclaimed, holding it gently in his hands. The cat froze, completely confused. What is happening? Why is he cuddling me? Without any warning, the main character carried the cat to his bed. Let's play for a while, he said cheerfully. He began pressing on the cat's stomach, eliciting an involuntary meow with every touch. Each time, the cat grew more frustrated and flustered. All through the night, the room echoed with the sound of the cat meowing as the main character continued his playful antics. At one point, he mused to himself, maybe I should turn into a cat too. This is kind of fun. And so, the night was filled with the soft, repetitive sounds of the cat's helpless meowing. The main character woke up to a sudden noise. Rubbing his eyes, he turned to the little butler girl and asked, "What's wrong with you? Is it morning already?" She clutched her stomach and muttered, "My stomach hurts a little," before bolting out of the room. "Just go to the damn toilet already," he shouted after her. From outside, her faint voice replied, "Please don't mind me." The main character sighed, thinking this whole situation is so annoying. Suddenly, a familiar system chime echoed in his mind. Ding! Plus 200 points. Reason: a misunderstanding. He blinked in confusion. What? How'd I get points? I haven't done anything yet this morning. Before he could process it, another chime sounded, and 2 panels appeared in front of him. New announcement. By accumulating enough false evil points, you have leveled up from beginner to novice. Unlocked. Additional store items now available. The main character stared in astonishment. Oh, he muttered, excitement rising. He began scrolling through the system store, his mind racing. There's so much more to buy now. I'll get this and that, and maybe that too. Another chime interrupted his shopping spree. Ding! New announcement. Main scenario quest. The attack on the commoner's stone rental. Objective: prevent the attack and capture the culprit. Reward: increase the awakening level of the hero's weapon. Failure penalty: small reduction in life force and lifespan. A main quest, he muttered. Then that means I need to get the item from the auction first. It's perfect since I promised to go with Sensei today anyway. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. The teacher had arrived. The main character called out to the little butler girl, "Go open the door." "Yes, young master," she replied obediently, bowing slightly as she greeted the teacher. "Good morning, Sensei." The teacher stepped into the room, her expression a mix of surprise and confusion. "Why are you here, Kania?" The little butler girl replied matter-of-factly, "I was given permission to share a room with the young master as his butler." The teacher froze, processing the words. Then, with an exasperated outburst, she yelled at the main character, "You're not supposed to share a room with the opposite sex. Are you out of your mind?" The main character smirked and shot back, as expected of a virgin. Before she could respond, he added, "You really should try to have your first time soon. If you don't, you might pass the marriageable age." The teacher's face turned beet red, and she stood frozen, as if she had just seen Medusa herself. Kania tried to calm the situation. "Sensei, I promise we haven't done anything inappropriate." Another chime echoed in the main character's mind. Ding. Plus 100 points. Reason, a harsh remark. He ignored the notification and walked closer to the teacher, smiling slyly. "Seriously, how long are you planning to stand here? Let's go already. Didn't you say you wanted to check out the back alleys?" Kania bowed politely as they left. "Please take care," she said, watching the two walk out the door. The teacher hesitated, glancing around. "Are you sure this is the right place?" The main character, annoyed, replied, "Just follow me and shut up. This is the right alley." They entered a dark, narrow passage where an eerie silence hung in the air. Suddenly, the teacher stopped, her expression twisting in frustration and anger. Why is this place like this?" The scene expanded before them, a bleak, heart-wrenching image. 3 emaciated children sat by the roadside, their ribs protruding from their malnourished frames. One of them appeared close to death, barely breathing. Nearby, 2 bloated nobles, as plump as pigs, were laughing and groping a young noblewoman, their arrogance as distasteful as the sight itself. The main character sighed. "I can't blame her. I feel the same way when I see this." He glanced at the teacher. "Even though she knows about the Empire's corruption and injustice, I bet she never imagined seeing it like this up close." The teacher's voice turned cold, her anger palpable. "Hurry up and take me to the store. After I'm done there, I'm going to clean up this entire area." The main character gestured ahead. "Relax. The store's right in front of us." The teacher blinked in surprise. "Already? So this is the place." Her astonishment quickly faded as she drew her sword with determination, her eyes blazing with intent. "Wait here. I'll finish this quickly." Watching her rush off, the main character sighed, scratching his head. "She's always like this." Just then, a commotion drew his attention. Down the alley, 2 grown men were mercilessly beating 3 small boys. One of the boys cried out in desperation, "Save me. Stop resisting." One of the men barked. The main character froze, watching in disbelief. The scene grew uglier as the men grabbed a young girl, roughly covering her mouth and tying her up. One of the men sneered, "The master will be pleased with a fine jewel like this." The main character's fists clenched, and his veins bulged in rage. "I came here to prepare for the main quest, but this..." He gritted his teeth, his pupils narrowing with fury as he stared at the men. "This is something I can't just overlook." Our protagonist, focused on preparing for his main quest, turns a corner and sees 2 older men tormenting 3 children. One of the kids cries for help, tears streaming down their face, as a man silences them, growling, "Stop struggling, you little pest." The other man ties a child up, sneering, "The master will be pleased with these fine jewels, won't he?" Anger wells up in the protagonist, as veins bulge from his fists. "I might be a villain, but I can't overlook this," he mutters, dashing after them. The men vanish into a guarded house where 2 large guards block the entrance. "Sorry, no brats allowed." One sneers, while the other adds smugly, "Disappear already." Feigning nonchalance, the protagonist tosses a bag of gold at their feet. Immediately, the guards kneel and grant him entry. Inside, a curvaceous woman at the bar greets him, purring. What a lovely customer. She presents a catalog of girls, asking which one suits his taste. With a smug grin, he teases, I prefer to see the goods rather than just photos. Though surprised, the woman laughs it off, remarking, so young, yet bold. When he tosses another bag of gold, her demeanor shifts. She bows, saying, follow me, and leads him down a torchlit cavern. As they walk, the protagonist notices strange engravings on the ground, and a system chime fills his mind. Succubus Queen, Strength, 7.5. Magic Power, 7.5. Intelligence, 7.5. Mental Strength, 8.5. Special Features, Blessing of Enchantment, Succubus Scent. Attribute, Flower Snake. Realizing he stumbled onto something bigger, he thinks, why would the Demon King's minions be here? I need to dig deeper. The woman turns back, grinning. We've arrived, she says, bowing theatrically. They enter a corridor lined with cages, where the women are trapped. The women inside feign smiles, saying, welcome, welcome, their voices trembling with reluctance. The hostess glances at him, teasing, is this too stimulating for you, young master? But he only smirks, his plan already forming. But then the main character simply just waved it off, saying, no, I like it. Well, I didn't know our main MC is a freak like that. By surprise, not expecting to hear this, her eyes widened from him, saying this the main character, then said, I actually prefer them younger, as he whips out another go bag. How's that sound? What did he say? Someone gotta call CPS right now, because he has a screw loose. The woman's demeanor changes abruptly as she sighs. It really can't be helped. Leading the protagonist to a secret corridor, she knocks 3 times on the wall, causing bricks to shift and reveal a hidden passage. As soon as it opens, the protagonist delivers a powerful kick, sending her flying into the wall and knocking her unconscious. Without hesitation, he calls out, just lay there. I'll handle this myself, before dashing into the passage at blinding speed. Inside, his eyes widen at the sight of a glowing summoning circle beside cages filled with terrified children. Damn bastards, he growls internally. This is the Succubus Queen's doing. They're planning to awaken the Demon King and using these kids as sacrifices. The children cry out, please save us. Their desperate screams pierce through the dark atmosphere. Suddenly, a voice echoes behind him. The Succubus Queen, now awake, unfurls her black wings and steps forward in an indecent outfit, sneering, so you've seen it. No matter. Capture him alive. She commands her followers, who swarm toward him. The protagonist calmly dons a mask. It'd be troublesome if the kids saw my face, he mutters. With deadly precision, he dashes around the room, taking down every enemy in mere seconds. The Succubus Queen trembles in fear, gasping, What are you? Ignoring her pleas and offers. I'll give you information on the Demon King. I will even offer you myself. He coldly pierces her heart with his blade. I don't make deals with scum who harm children, he says, watching her collapse lifelessly. He leads the children outside safely. Is anyone else wondering if he just left the women in cages? As the children are finally outside breathing fresh air, all the kids shout out, thank you very much for saving us. The MC just states it wasn't that big of a deal and not to think too much into it. Turns to the children. He reassures them. Go straight home and use this money to buy something good to eat. They cry out their gratitude, promising to stay safe. As they leave, system prompts appear. Sudden quest cleared. Choose your reward. The protagonist sighs, noting the modest rewards. Among the children, a small girl with emerald green eyes catches his attention. A system chime reveals her latent potential as a pure-hearted individual with great magical talent. Deciding to invest in her future, he hands her a ring adorned with 4 petals. This is a lucky charm. Keep it, he says. The girl looks up at him, her emerald green eyes wide with curiosity, and asks, why would you give me something like this? The protagonist replies with a casual shrug. You could say it's an investment for this country, I guess. Her eyes widen further in astonishment. Could I have her name? I'd like to repay you one day, she says earnestly. In that moment, the protagonist exudes an air of quiet confidence. He pats her head gently, saying, it's fine. I was just playing the hero this one time. As he turns to leave, he adds, "It's enough if you just stay healthy. Also, start studying magic. You have the talent." "Magic? Me?" she stammers, stunned. With a faint smile, he vanishes into the shadows. Clutching the ring tightly, the girl whispers, "Thank you so much, hero. I'll do my best to learn magic and repay this favor one day. Please wait for me until then." Unbeknownst to the protagonist, this single act of kindness would ripple through history, bringing about a monumental change in the future. As our protagonist returns to where he left his teacher, he's met with a shocking sight. The entire building reduced to rubble. His teacher, standing amidst the debris, shouts, "Where have you been running off to?" He stares at the destruction in disbelief, thinking, "Do you even know how to hold back?" But brushing it off, he mutters to himself, "I took a little detour, but I should head to the auction soon. I was at the Information Guild." He tells her, "A black magic artifact is going up for auction today." His teacher's expression shifts instantly. "What did you just say? I can't let that happen. Hurry and tell me where it is." She grabs his shirt, shaking him for more details. Scratching his cheek, he looks away. There's a barrier around it. "You won't get in without an admission ticket." She groans in frustration, eyeing him for another solution. "Well, there is one way," he finally admits. Fast forward to the auction, and his teacher is gripping his arm like a devoted lover. "Isn't there any other way to get inside?" she mutters under her breath, trying not to draw attention. "Didn't I tell you?" he replies with a smirk. "Without an admission ticket, the only way in is to enter as my lover." As they take their seats, she scowls. "Even so," he cuts her off, whispering, "Come on, act properly." Meanwhile, he reflects on the situation. There's a risk she might go berserk, but there's no better bodyguard than her. His teacher sneaks a glance at him, suspicion in her eyes. Has he done this before? As the auction begins, our main character relaxes slightly, thinking, "Looks like a pretty ordinary auction. Nobody should be interested in that artifact, so I should get it easily." But as he scans the room, he suddenly tenses. His teacher notices the change in his demeanor. "What is it?" "Is it the magic artifact?" she whispers while scanning the room herself. However, his focus is locked onto a black hooded figure lurking in the background. A system screen appears before him, revealing her identity, Kania. Her abilities and special features are displayed, making his expression darken. Why is she here too? He wonders. Before he can process it, a lady in a red hood takes a seat beside him. "Excuse me," she says as she settles in. Another system screen flashes before him. Klana, another main heroine. Her abilities and attributes are listed in front of him. Not her too. He groans internally. His paranoia spikes as he scans for any more familiar faces. That's when he spots Frolosh sitting directly in front of him. His stomach sinks. This is the worst possible scenario. Leaning toward his teacher, he whispers urgently, "Never call me by my name while we're here." Who would have thought all three of them would be aiming for the same item? He muses. At least Irina wasn't here yet. He contemplates their motives. Are they planning on controlling me with that item? As if answering his thoughts, the auctioneer steps forward. "Now, let me present to you the unknown stone, a mysterious artifact whose power even the greatest appraisers cannot decipher." A system screen appears before him. Stone of Domination. This stone allows its user to manipulate a target's mind and assume total control over them. His eyes narrow. "I need to secure that stone at all costs." The auctioneer starts the bid. "We'll begin at 1 gold. Without hesitation, our protagonist raises his sign. "Sorry, but I can't let this fall into the wrong hands." Don't underestimate the financial strength of the greatest ducal family in the empire. The auctioneer announces, 15 gold from the young master. Is there another bid? Before he can relax, the red-hooded girl, Klana, raises her sign. 20 gold. A new bid from the lady. His jaw clenches. So she's aiming for it too. Then, to his horror, the priestess, Frolosh, raises her sign and confidently writes down a number. 10,000 gold. The entire auction hall goes silent. The auctioneer gasps. Unbelievable. A bid of 10,000 gold? Could this be the winning bid? Frolosh, now realizing her mistake, pales. She whispers to herself, What do I do? I wrote down the wrong number. Our protagonist buries his face in his hands in frustration. She's so clumsy. Shaking it off, he quickly writes down a new bid. 11,000 gold. Before he can catch his breath, another bid follows. 12,000 gold. He grits his teeth. This is going to be a long night. Our main character raises his sign again. 13,000 gold. But before he can even process his bid, another voice calls out. 20,000 gold. The auctioneer gasps. 22,000 gold. Unbelievable. Then another bid follows. 30,000 gold from the man with the white hair and blue mask. The tension rises as the numbers continue to climb. 40,000 gold. 50,000 gold. 52,000 gold. 55,000 gold. The auctioneer looks around the room. Is there anyone willing to bid higher? Going once, going twice. Sold at 55,000 gold. As the final bid is confirmed, a chilling sensation washes over our protagonist. He glances at the elderly man who had been bidding against him, and for the briefest moment, he feels a deep, unsettling aura emanating from him. Damn, that was costly, but at least I secured it, he thinks to himself. Before he can celebrate, a purple aura suddenly flares up around his little butler's hands. What is this aura? He mutters. His butler, looking deep in thought, murmurs, 55,000 gold. I wonder how many years of my salary that would take. Then, before he can react, she raises her hands, forming a magic seal. Wait, you can't be. Before he can finish his sentence, darkness envelopes the entire room. No way she planned this from the start. Chaos erupts in the auction hall. The auctioneer calls out, "Everyone, please remain calm. We will continue investigating this quietly." Our main character grits his teeth. Damn it, this is the worst. Why is this happening? No, there's no time for that now. I need to secure the stone. He dashes forward, reaching for the artifact. But just as his fingers are about to touch it, a golden light flashes before him. A foot, glowing with golden energy, slams down, stopping him in his tracks. Through the fading darkness, he sees a figure in a red mask. "You weren't supposed to be here," a regal voice states. "Who in the world are you?" His mind races. The princess of the kingdom? Her sharp gaze is locked onto him. "It would be in your best interest to identify yourself right now," she commands. With a stern and straight voice, he says down. The princess, in confusion, didn't process what he said. "Just look down," Frey said. He barely has time to react before another commotion distracts everyone. The princess suddenly screams, "You shameless devil! How dare you? What the hell?" Before he can even respond, Ferloche, standing beside her, glares at him. "What a horrible act," she exclaims. "You truly are one of the Demon King's minions." A brilliant holy light flares up around her as she prays. "Oh, sun god, grant me your power to smite this perverted demon." A massive light manifestation forms behind her. The main character groans. "No, no, no. I'm not a demon, and I didn't set her clothes on fire. She did it to herself." A holy shield manifests and slams into the ground, aiming for him. A massive shockwave ripples through the room. Dust clouds rise, debris flies everywhere, and the impact causes part of the auction stage to collapse. As the dust settles, everyone stares at the spot where the main character should have been hit. Instead, he kneels on the ground, completely unharmed. The priestess stares in disbelief. That should have been a direct hit. How did you? Our protagonist wipes sweat from his brow. This girl is so fired up she's losing all sense of reason. The priestess clenches her fists. This must be one of the sun god's trials. I shall face it wholeheartedly. The princess, her patience thinning, glares at him. "I will kill you. How dare you look down on me?" Both women raise their hands, preparing to attack. But before they can strike, a sudden force knocks them both aside in an instant. A single step, a single, effortless step. Both the princess and priestess collapse to the ground, gasping for air. The entire auction hall falls silent. Our main character slowly turns his gaze to the source of the unimaginable pressure. An old man steps forward. He removes his mask and smiles. "I never thought I'd run into you in a place like this, Mr. Frey Starlight." A system screen flashes before the protagonist. "Eucharius. Special abilities. Special features. His heart pounds. No way. Why is he here? The great demon Eucharius. The great demon Eucharius. Frey quickly steadied himself, adjusting into a kneeling position on the ground. His heart pounded as he faced the overwhelming presence before him. Could you possibly be Eucharius-sama? The fierce aura surrounding the man sent shivers down Frey's spine. He cautiously glanced around the room. The two women who had just been preparing to attack him now lay unconscious on the ground, completely overwhelmed by the sheer force of the demon's presence. The man before him, Eucharius, merely smirked, his sharp, intelligent eyes scanning the chaos of the auction hall. Indeed, he said, his voice rich with amusement. I've come here for the stone of domination. Frey's breath hitched. He knew it. So he's after the stone too. This just got even worse. His mind raced as he quickly tried to suppress his reaction. He acted as if he had no idea what the stone truly was, pretending it was some insignificant relic. The stone of domination? Frey muttered, tilting his head slightly, feigning ignorance. Eucharius chuckled, a knowing smirk playing on his lips. Oh, come now. Don't play dumb. The demon took a step forward, his presence alone making the air feel heavier. That stone is a tool that will enhance my power beyond imagination. With it, even the Demon King herself will be forced to acknowledge me. Frey's eyes darted across the battlefield. His little butler, Kania, was engaged in a desperate fight, using her dark magic to form a purple shield as she fended off numerous assailants. His mind reeled. So this is the man who took the stone in the past, the one who changed everything. Eucharius folded his arms, his confidence unshaken. Once I have that stone in my grasp, no one will be able to stand against me. Not even the so-called gods. Frey swallowed hard, forcing his voice to stay calm. I see. By the way, about those two. He gestured toward Akani and the professor. Eucharius barely spared them a glance before laughing. Ah, those two? I simply brainwashed them. A cold chill ran down Frey's spine. What? Eucharius stroked his mustache absent-mindedly, completely unfazed. That swordswoman over there attacked me, so I took over her mind. A mere demonstration of my power. His eyes gleamed with dark amusement. Now, imagine what I could do once I have the stone of domination. I'll be unstoppable. Frey tightened his grip on his sword. So, he's already powerful, but right now he's incomplete. If I'm ever going to have a chance against him, it's now. With a deep breath, he lowered his stance. That puts me at ease. Eucharius raised an eyebrow. Oh. Frey's lips curled into a smirk. So, what you're telling me is that you're still weak? Before Eucharius could respond, Frey moved. In an instant, he dashed past the demon, blade flashing in the dim light. A single, clean slash. Blood splattered onto the cold floor. Eucharius staggered, eyes wide in shock. Frey landed gracefully behind him, his sword humming with magic. For a moment, I almost thought you were the great demon, Frey taunted, watching as Eucharius collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. But he had no time to celebrate. In the background, Kania had fallen. She lay on the ground, her arms desperately shielding her face, bracing herself for a final attack. Above her, a sword glowed ominously, a single moment away from striking her down. And the wielder, it was their professor. No, she's still under the demon's control. Kania. Time slowed as Frey sprinted toward her, his feet barely touching the ground. A golden coin slipped from his pocket, clinking softly onto the floor. Kania, still squinting her eyes shut, braced herself for the incoming strike. But the pain never came. Instead, a masked figure appeared before her, shielding her with his own body. The blade tore through flesh. Blood splattered onto Kania's face. She gasped, her eyes snapping open. Before her, the mysterious masked man, her savior, knelt on the ground, clutching his wound. What? Her hands trembled as she reached for him. Are you okay? Say something. Frey coughed up blood, but his grip never wavered. Ignoring the pain, he reached for his sword. With slow, deliberate movements, he stood up, placing a comforting hand on Kania's shoulder. She looked up at him, gazing into his eyes. Why, she whispered. Why in the world did you save me? Frey wiped the blood from his face, his expression unreadable. His gaze shifted toward Eukarya's body. This is bad. Even with the demon dead, the professor was still under his influence. Frey took a deep breath. Can I really win against my professor at full strength in my current state? Then, the professor's dark magic surged. Her eyes, once pitch black, flickered with color. Frey saw his chance. Their swords clashed in a brilliant display of light and shadow, sparks flying through the air. The professor gritted her teeth, her expression one of pure struggle. The magic controlling her was beginning to break. With one final clash, the darkness shattered. Her body trembled as she collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. Frey let out a long sigh of relief. It's over. The brainwashing was undone. He turned away from the auction hall, clutching the stone of domination tightly in his hands. I need to get out of here before more trouble arrives. As he started to leave, wait! A small, desperate voice called out behind him. Kenya! Wait, please, she cried, taking a step forward. Who in the world are you? Frey stiffened. Kenya rushed after him. Wait! Tell me your name. But Frey didn't stop. The moment she reached out toward him, he vanished. Like a phantom in the night. Kenya stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She clenched her fists, whispering under her breath. I will find you. Frey sprinted through the empty streets, his breath ragged and uneven. His vision blurred, his legs screamed in pain, and blood trickled from his wound, staining his clothes. I can't lose consciousness here. He gritted his teeth, forcing his body forward. If I fall now, everything I did would be in vain. His heart pounded violently in his chest, his mind racing. Just a little further, if I can make it to the student dorms. I just need to hold on until then. The night air was cold against his sweat-drenched skin. His body threatened to give out, but he kept pushing forward, one step at a time. The once chaotic auction hall was now eerily silent, the aftermath of battle etched into the blood-stained floors. A soft groan broke the quiet. The princess stirred, clutching her throbbing head. Ugh, what happened? She mumbled, rubbing her temples as a pounding migraine pulsed through her skull. It felt like I was trapped in a horrible nightmare. Beside her, the priestess stretched her arms, letting out a relaxed sigh. Ah, that was the best sleep I've had in ages. The princess shot her an annoyed look before attempting to stand. Then, she froze. Her foot had stepped into something wet. Slowly, her gaze lowered, and her blood ran cold. Beneath her boot was a pool of thick, crimson blood. And just inches away, the lifeless face of a demon stared back at her, its long tongue limp on the floor. Ah! The princess shrieked, stumbling back in horror. The priestess, startled by the scream, turned to look, only to nearly fall over and shock herself. As their panicked eyes darted around the room, they finally noticed someone standing near the corpse. A lone figure. The princess' breath hitched as she squinted through the dim lighting. Then, realization struck. Kanya-san? Is that you? The small figure slowly turned around, revealing wide, astonished eyes. The little butler, Kanya, stared at the princess, her expression unreadable. Princess, why are you? But before Kanya could finish, the princess cut her off, her voice sharp and serious. The fact that you're here can only mean one thing. She took a step forward, her tone turning cold. You have memories of your past life too, don't you? Silence. Kanya's breath caught in her throat. How did she know? The princess' expression remained unreadable as she studied Kanya's reaction. Then, her eyes narrowed. Just answer me this one question. The room seemed to grow colder. Are you Frey's enemy? Or are you his ally? Kanya felt her pulse quicken. She hadn't meant to say it. She hadn't even thought about it. But before she could stop herself, the words slipped from her lips. I am his enemy. A stunned silence fell over the room. Then, the princess' serious expression melted into a radiant smile. Oh, thank the gods. The priestess, on the other hand, looked like she had just been struck by lightning. Her jaw nearly hit the ground, her eyes bulging in shock. She sputtered. The princess ignored her, grinning mischievously as she leaned closer to Kanya. Then, in that case, she clasped Kanya's hands in hers, eyes gleaming with excitement. Would you like to join our Frey Murder Preparation Alliance? Kania blinked. The what? The priestess, still in shock, choked on air. The princess nodded enthusiastically. Our secret alliance dedicated to discussing ways to kill that bastard. Kania stared in disbelief. Was this really happening? The princess then turned toward the priestess, her expression suddenly sharp and scolding. And you, she said, her voice taking on a sassy edge. The priestess flinched. Why yes, she stammered. The princess crossed her arms, raising a judgmental brow. Are you studying properly? A single sweat drop slid down the priestess' face. What? She stuttered, her eyes wide with panic. The princess narrowed her gaze. If the church's influence grows too strong, then everything will go exactly as Frey planned. You need to be careful. The priestess lowered her head, defeated. Okay. She didn't even try to argue. In the background, Kania remained completely still. Her mind was racing, her cheeks slightly flushed. Because among all this insanity, she had spotted something that made her heart pound. As the princess continued scolding the priestess, Kania slowly turned away, her eyes widening with realization. Her lips parted slightly as she whispered to herself. This is... Inside the dimly lit student dormitory, Frey sat on the edge of his bed, wrapping fresh bandages around his body. Every movement sent sharp pain through his muscles, but he forced himself to stay steady. What a nightmare of a day. His body ached, exhaustion weighing down on him like a ton of bricks. He sighed, rubbing his temples. A flicker of flame illuminated the dark room. Frey held up the mask he had worn earlier and watched as it burned to ash in his palm. At least this will erase any clues that I was the masked man who saved Kania. The Demon King's minions appeared out of nowhere. Then, the heroine suddenly got her act together while I was barely holding on. Still, the thought sent a shiver down his spine. If they had been just a little stronger, I would have died today. Tired beyond belief, Frey began dressing himself, moving sluggishly. Just as he finished buttoning his shirt, the door suddenly swung open. Frey's body tensed, his breath catching in his throat. Kania stepped inside, her posture straight, her voice calm. Excuse me. I've returned. A cold sweat dripped down Frey's back. How did she get back here so quickly? Kania took a step closer, studying his face. Master, where have you been today? Frey forced a casual scoff, waving her off. Didn't I tell you earlier? I went shopping with our professor, Nay-san. He brushed past her and flopped onto his bed. I'm exhausted. Stop questioning me and turn off the lights already. Kania didn't move. That's strange, she murmured, tilting her head. Frey's heartbeat quickened. I saw someone who looked exactly like you in the back alleys earlier. Another bead of sweat rolled down Frey's forehead. Kania continued, her eyes sharp. He covered his face with a mask, but the sword he used looked very familiar. Frey gritted his teeth. Damn it, she doesn't have conclusive proof yet. I just have to play it off. He scoffed, pulling the blanket over his face. Stop being ridiculous. There are thousands of swords out there that look like mine. Kania's expression darkened. Her voice dropped to a chilling tone. Is that so? Then, she reached in her pocket. By the way, when you were running away, you accidentally dropped this. She held out her hand. A golden coin rested in her palm. Frey's eyes widened in horror. Don't touch that carelessly. Kania's gaze remained steady. I found this at the auction house today. How strange. It seems you were so desperate to escape that you didn't even notice. Frey shot up from the bed, his face pale as a ghost. But it was too late. The damage was done. Kania had all the proof she needed. Frey's hands trembled as he snatched the golden coin back, his grip so tight his knuckles turned white. Then, in frustration, he threw it against the wall. Just what the hell are you talking about? He snapped. Kania stared at him in silence. Then, she climbed onto the bed. Before Frey could react, she straddled him, pinning him down. She grabbed the hem of his shirt and lifted it up. Her sharp eyes scanned his body. The bandages. Her breath hitched. There it was, the undeniable truth. A deep gash ran along his back, still fresh. The same place where the masked man had been slashed earlier that night. Kania exhaled softly, her gaze filled with quiet understanding. There was no point in denying it anymore. So, what are you planning to do now? Frey asked coldly. Kania simply stared at him. There's no point in playing the fool anymore. Frey felt his throat tighten. His body tensed, waiting for her to say something. Anything. Instead, Kania whispered, "Tell me, why did you save me?" Frey clenched his fists. "Stop." "Why?" Kania pressed. "I said stop." Before another word could be spoken, a sudden system message appeared before Frey. Penalty incurred. Debuff. Fate of the false villain. The user's lifespan and vitality have been greatly reduced. Stacks 1. An unbearable pain surged through Frey's chest. His vision blurred, his body convulsing violently. Then, he coughed up blood. "Young master." Kania gasped, reaching for him. His body shuddered, blood dripping from his mouth, his eyes turning a deep crimson. His breathing grew ragged, his limbs trembling uncontrollably. "What's happening to you?" Kania cried. Frey's fingers dug into the bed sheets, his face twisted in agony. "Damn it. Everything that happened today. None of it was in my calculations." His grip weakened, his vision fading in and out. Kania hesitated for only a moment. Then, she grabbed him, pulling him into her arms. "Young master." She held on to him, her voice trembling. "Stay with me." Frey. The world around him blurred into darkness. And then, everything went black. Kania sat beside the bed, watching her young master in silence. His pale face, the ragged rise and fall of his chest, the bloodstains on his bandages. He looked so pitiful. Her fingers curled into fists. Is this really all right? She had spent so long dreaming of the day she would kill him. If I had left him alone, he would have died today. So why? Why did the thought make her chest feel so unbearably tight? Her lips trembled. No, I can't let him die. Not yet. There had to be a reason why he saved her. But if she didn't like the answer, she could still kill him afterward. Her resolve hardened. Kania raised her hands, summoning dark magic. A spherical formation formed in her palms, the energy wrapping around her body like writhing shadows. A sharp sting shot through her arms. Even after all her training, controlling this spell was still painful. But it didn't matter. This was her best chance. I'll tap into his subconscious. With him unconscious, it would be even easier. Then, I'll finally know what's been going on inside of his head. As the spell activated, the world around her shifted. Inside his subconscious, Kania opened her eyes and immediately froze. It was bright. His subconscious was clear. She had seen into the minds of many sinners before. They were always engulfed in darkness. But here, it was like standing beneath a vast, endless sky. "Why is it like this?" A soft voice startled her. "Hello." Kania turned. Her breath caught in her throat. A young Frey stood before her, smiling up at her with eyes so full of hope. It had been years since she had last seen him like this. A sudden wave of hesitation washed over her. "No." She clenched her fists, shoving down her emotions. This was still Frey. He had absolute control over this space. She couldn't let her guard down. Dark magic swirled around her, tendrils of crimson wrapping around the boy's arms and legs, binding him in place. Frey's smile faded as he struggled against the restraints. Kania narrowed her eyes. "This is my magic of O's." The magic pulsed, turning deep red. "Swear that you will answer my questions truthfully." The boy nodded without hesitation. "I swear. So please let me go." The binds unshackled, falling away. The boy looked down at his freed arms, his eyes shimmering as if he didn't understand what had just happened. Kania remained still. Then, she spoke her first question. "Why did Frey save me?" The boy smiled softly. "Because you're precious to him." Kania's expression darkened. "Precious," she repeated coldly. "After everything he's done to me. After everything he's put me through." Her hands trembled as she spat. "Just what do you think he's done to me?" The boy didn't waver. There was a reason for it. Kania gritted her teeth. What possible reason could justify any of it? But the boy only shook his head. "Frey has been sacrificing his own life force to save you." The words hit her like a blade to the heart. She froze. What? The memories started flooding in. The strange incidents she had noticed. The weakened state of his body. The constant pain he tried to hide. It all suddenly made sense. Kania's hands clutched her chest. Her heartbeat, it hurt. The boy sighed. I knew words alone wouldn't convince you. He stepped forward, reaching out a hand. I'll show you instead. The truth unveiled. A blinding light engulfed Kania. Memories surged into her mind. She heard Frey's voice. I became the villain. I always intended to kill myself, taking the demon queen down with me. I want to protect everyone. This time, for sure, I'll be able to protect everyone. I won't live for very long after all. I need to make good use of her in order for her to survive. Kania, please tell me. Why did you save me? Her breath caught. Her body shook violently. All this time, every despicable action Frey had committed, it was all to save the world. And she was the reason he was like this. The realization shattered her. Tears streamed down her face as her knees buckled beneath her. Her voice broke into sobs as she cried out, Frey, what have I done? She covered her face, tears pouring uncontrollably. Even after everything, he still sacrificed his life force for her. Young Master Frey. She clenched her fists, her body trembling. What is the truth anymore? A small hand touched her shoulder. She looked up. The young Frey was smiling softly, his eyes filled with warmth. Please don't blame yourself. His small arms wrapped around her, pulling her into a gentle embrace. It's enough for me to bear all the hate. Kania's tears wouldn't stop. The subconscious world began to crumble around her, breaking apart like fragile glass. As the light faded, Kania could still feel the warmth of the boy's embrace. Then, she woke up. Tears still streamed down her face. And for the first time, she felt truly lost. Sitting there truly lost, not knowing what was right or wrong. The moon bathed the room in silver light, its soft glow illuminating the quiet space. A faint groan broke the silence. Frey's fingers twitched, his brows furrowing in visible agony as he stirred awake. A cold sweat clung to his skin as he forced himself to sit up, his body protesting every movement. His dazed gaze wandered, taking in his surroundings. This place is, he murmured, his voice hoarse. The lingering discomfort was evident in his expression as he struggled to piece things together. But before he could gather his thoughts, a familiar voice called out, Young Master. Kania had sprung to her feet, her violet eyes wide with emotion. For a moment, she simply stared at him, her face slowly turning red. Frey's eyes narrowed slightly as his mind raced to connect the dots. Then, realization dawned. She knew. Kania had figured out the truth. A long sigh escaped his lips as he looked at her seriously. I know it may not satisfy you, he said slowly, meeting her gaze, but I intend to tell you everything. There was no point in hiding it anymore. Kania hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Please tell me. Her voice was anxious, but determined. Frey exhaled deeply before starting from the beginning. I was given a mission, to save the world. Because of that, I'm bound by a strict vow. Kania listened intently, her hands clasped together, her expression unreadable. Right now, he continued, I grow stronger whenever I commit evil. But, he hesitated before adding, whenever my good deeds are exposed, I lose a portion of my lifespan. Silence settled between them. Kania's eyes widened slightly as she finally connected the missing pieces. And that's why you've been threatening me like this? Frey's jaw clenched as he curled his hands into fists. Yes. His voice was sharp, bitter. I used you, Kania. I manipulated you for the sake of my mission. His expression darkened, his once lively gaze now void of warmth. Then, never forgive me. His voice was flat, final. No matter what reasons I had. His fingers trembled slightly as he continued. My actions cannot be justified. Kania's lips parted slightly as she processed his words. She lowered her gaze, her thoughts spiraling. Everything suddenly made sense. Every cruel act, every ruthless decision. Even when he tormented her, he never once laid a hand on the innocent. Aren't you in a situation where that can't be avoided? She finally said, her voice quiet. And you've even been giving me some of your vitality every night. Frey froze. His head snapped toward her, his eyes widening in disbelief. You noticed? For the first time, his usually composed mask shattered. Kania gave a small nod. I didn't understand what you were doing at first, she admitted. But now I do. Frey let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair as he leaned back slightly. I suppose it was only a matter of time before you found out. He looked at her then, his crimson eyes steady. So, what will you do now? His gaze locked onto hers, trying to read her. Would she leave now that she knew? Would she resent him? Kania's cheeks flushed slightly as she lowered her head. Then, her voice, once cold and distant, was now soft and unwavering. I will continue to serve you, just as I always have. Frey blinked. She lifted her gaze, her violet eyes shining with conviction. I won't be satisfied until I repay my debt. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, making the candlelight flicker. Frey let out a breathless chuckle, shaking his head slightly. I kind of expected you to say that. A small smile, one that was neither forced nor bitter, touched his lips. Then please continue taking care of me. And in the quiet, moonlit room, they simply looked at each other. The distance between them felt smaller than ever. The soft morning light streamed through the cafe windows, casting a warm glow over the wooden floors. A small orange cat sat on a cushion, lazily licking its paw with delicate precision. The cuteness filled the air, making the otherwise tense atmosphere seem deceptively peaceful. Suddenly, Princess, why are we meeting at a cat cafe? Kania's voice carried a mix of curiosity and suspicion as she glared at the girl in front of her. A gray-black cat was nestled against the princess's cheek, purring softly. Her face was flushed red, her expression filled with excitement as she nuzzled the feline. Without looking away from the cat, the princess finally responded. Because no one can spy on us here. Kania's gaze narrowed slightly, watching the princess's mannerisms carefully. A soft paw pressed against Kania's lap, and she glanced down to see the orange cat now resting comfortably there, its tail flicking idly. Is that so? Kania murmured, stroking the cat absent-mindedly. But then, the air shifted. The princess's demeanor hardened, and she looked straight at Kania with sharp, calculating eyes. Since I failed to obtain his stigma of domination, she said, her voice lowering, I need to secure one of Frey's weaknesses. Kania's fingers tensed slightly on the cat's fur. To keep him from making any moves, the princess's eyes darkened, her voice filled with barely contained fury. Honestly, I want to tear him apart right this very moment. And then let's do it now. Frloche declared, her voice brimming with reckless enthusiasm. Her loud outburst startled the two cats curled up in their laps. With a sharp screech, the felines bolted away, leaping onto a nearby shelf in alarm. Kania watched the commotion with a blank expression, resisting the urge to rub her temples. The princess sighed, regaining her composure. Even if he dies, our lives will continue. Her voice had lost its heat, turning eerily calm and methodical. We need to leave as few footprints as possible. No evidence. Frloche, meanwhile, simply scratched her head, clearly not putting much thought into the finer details. Kania remained silent, watching them both carefully. Her thoughts drifted. If I can observe them like this, then at least I can be of use to the young master. Her fingers curled slightly against the fabric of her uniform. But is that enough? Her mind raced, considering everything she had seen, everything she had learned. There really isn't much I can do for him. I can't shoulder his burdens for him. But her gaze softened as a quiet realization settled over her. Instead of grand gestures, I can start with something small. A simple goal came to mind. First, I should prepare him a proper meal, so that, even for a brief moment, young master might smile. As the two women across from her continued their dangerous discussion, Kania silently formulated her own plans. The warm glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the large windows, casting soft shadows across the room. Kania stood before her young master, her hands clasped neatly in front of her as she bowed deeply. I hope the food is to your liking, young master, she said, her voice steady yet tinged with nervous anticipation. Across from her, Frey sat comfortably, munching on a sandwich, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. After swallowing, he leaned back slightly, exhaling in relief. Of course it's great. I've been so frustrated not being able to say those simple words. Kania's face brightened instantly, her eyes widening as a faint pink hue dusted her cheeks. Frey, meanwhile, wiped the corners of his mouth and placed the empty plate aside. All right, now that breakfast is over, let's get started on today's life force transfer. Kania stiffened. But, young master, if you continue to... It's fine, Frey interjected before she could even finish, his tone firm yet casual. It's not like I'll die just by giving you some life force. Despite his confidence, Kania's brows furrowed in concern. Understood, but please, refrain from pushing yourself too hard. I don't want you to strain yourself any more than necessary. Frey merely waved off her worries. After a moment of hesitation, Kania finally settled onto a chair, her movements slow, deliberate. She lifted her shirt slightly, exposing the smooth skin beneath. Though she said nothing, her flushed face spoke volumes. Frey took a deep breath. I'll get started then. As the ritual began, a powerful aura enveloped the room. A reddish-pink light shimmered between them, flickering like a pulse of pure energy. Kania's body trembled slightly as the enormous amount of life force flowed into her. But Frey, sweat beaded along his forehead, his breathing growing uneven. His skin paled as an unnatural heat consumed his body. His vision blurred. And then, cough. A sharp pain shot through his chest. His body convulsed as he coughed violently, splattering red droplets of blood onto his sleeve. Kania's eyes snapped open, her momentary trance shattering as she took in the sight of her master. Her stomach twisted in pain. A searing, stabbing sensation tore through her abdomen, so intense that she cried out, clutching at her midsection. Frey's eyes widened in alarm. Kania, what's wrong? She gasped, her entire body trembling, as if an invisible blade was twisting inside her. Through her haze of pain, she saw it. Dark energy leaking from her stomach, swirling with ominous black tendrils. Frey's expression darkened. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. Some of my stellar mana and black magic must have gotten mixed in with the transfer. He reached out, his fingers already preparing to draw the corrupted energy back into himself. Wait, young master, you mustn't. Before she could stop him, Frey placed his palm over her stomach and began absorbing the dark energy back into his own body. The pain in Kania's stomach began to ease, but at a terrible cost. Frey's face contorted in agony. Sweat dripped from his temples, his fingers trembling from the sheer effort. His vision flickered, his limbs felt unbearably heavy, and the moment he withdrew the last trace of corrupted magic. NGH. His body nearly collapsed forward. Kania lunged, catching his wrist. Young master, please stop this. I'm fine. Just stop, she pleaded, desperation lacing her voice. Frey sucked in a breath, his chest heaving. And then, phew, he exhaled sharply, forcing a weak chuckle. That was over faster than I thought. Kania stared at him, her heart pounding from the sheer lengths he had just gone for her. But before she could find the right words to say, her gaze landed on his left arm. Her eyes widened. Young master, your arm. She gasped, her voice raw with panic. Frey followed her gaze. His left arm was bruised, nearly black, dark energy still faintly swirling around it. Blood dripped from the tips of his fingers, splattering onto the floor. Yet he merely waved his hand dismissively. It's just a bruise. He flexed his fingers slightly before rolling down his sleeve to cover the wound. It hurts a little, but I'll be fine. I'm right-handed anyway, so it's not a big deal. Kania's hands clenched into fists, her expression darkening. Getting rid of this is going to be near impossible. Frey sighed, forcing a reassuring smile despite his exhaustion. It's not the end of the world. His voice was light, too light, as if to make the issue seem insignificant. It'll probably go back to normal once this is all over. But Kania, she couldn't hide the way her expression twisted in distress. As she stared at the man before her, the one sacrificing himself time and time again for her sake, she felt an unfamiliar sensation bubbling inside her. A painful, desperate ache. Before she could dwell on it any longer, Frey stretched, shaking off the tension in his limbs. Anyway, school is about to start. We should get going. Kania took a moment to steady herself, suppressing her thoughts. Then, she bowed slightly, her voice composed but tinged with something else, something unspoken. "Yes, young master. Let's head out." As evening settled over the academy, the students sat attentively in the lecture hall, their professor standing before them with an air of authority. "For the midterms, the matches will be one-on-one sparring duels," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the class. Seated toward the back, Frey leaned against his chair, arms crossed as he watched in silence. "My body's in awful shape right now, but my plans have gone off without a hitch. I've been working hard to build up points at the academy." As he pondered his progress, a familiar chime echoed in his mind. Ding! A translucent system screen appeared before him. False evil point status. Total false evil points acquired, 3,560. Remaining false evil points, 630. Another screen materialized, listing his current store purchases. Store inventory. Information search, level 2. Emergency safeguard. Mind reading, level 2. Frey smirked. "I've obtained all the available skills and items. Now I can focus on the main quest." Another system chime rang. Ding! New main quest unlocked. Main quest 1-1. Fight Irina failure during the midterms and achieve victory. Reward: Lifespan Charger. This quest does not interfere with the progress of the route. No penalty will be incurred if skipped. Frey's expression darkened as he processed the information. So this quest forces Irina into the fire. If I remember correctly, the nobles who lost to her in the midterms held a grudge and later attacked the commoners' dormitory. But their actions in this scenario could change depending on my choices. Whether I win, lose, or even run away from my match with Irina. Each choice will affect the future. As these thoughts ran through his mind, visions of possible futures flickered before his eyes. A man kneeling in defeat before Irina, his eyes burning with humiliation, gripping his weapon as he glared toward the commoners' dormitory, a silent vow of revenge forming. The scene shifted. The same man, leading an attack against the dormitory, flames consuming the building as terrified screams echoed in the night. Frey's eyes narrowed. So if I lose to her, I can indirectly push the story in that direction. Another system prompt interrupted his thoughts. Alternate paths unlocked. Avoid the fight entirely and manipulate another into taking your place. Become the mastermind. Defeat Irina and claim victory. Reward: Villain's unspecified gift, high difficulty. Lose to Irina. Frey smirked. I can handle the penalties without issue. Obviously, I'll choose the route where I become the villain. Following the prophecy is much easier than gambling on an unknown path. He turned his focus back to the professor as she concluded her speech. Anyone who slacks off will fail immediately. Prepare for your matches. Pair up and report by next period. That's all. As she stepped down from the podium, Frey scanned the room, analyzing the current situation. A bead of sweat slid down his temple. This is troublesome. Fighting Irina is easy, but the problem is she has no chance of beating me right now. The scene shifted. The dimly lit alley behind the academy dormitories was filled with the sounds of struggle. A group of brutish men stood in a semicircle, raining kicks and blows upon two young women. Their cruel laughter echoed in the night. A blonde noblewoman stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a mocking smile. One of the victims, Irina Filliard, gritted her teeth, her body trembling from pain. "Stop it. This has nothing to do with any of you." One of the brutes sneered. "Nothing to do with us. You ruined Lord Frey's mood." Beside her, a second girl, a brunette, sobbed, her hands trembling as she desperately cast a shield spell to protect them. But the ones who invited Irina to the banquet didn't say anything. A sharp kick to her stomach cut off her words. The brute grinned. "Those idiots don't count." Then, a slow, deliberate set of footsteps echoed through the alley. A chilling presence descended upon them. The group froze. Frey stepped forward, his expression unreadable, his scarlet eyes gleaming under the moonlight. "Oh, you're clever, huh?" he mused, his voice laced with amusement. "I didn't even have to order you to do this." A wicked smile curled at his lips as he approached the blonde noblewoman. The girl's face flushed pink, her playful giggle breaking the silence. "Oh my Lord Frey, how could you come to such a filthy place?" She clung to his arm, pressing against him as she batted her lashes. Frey merely chuckled. I was just thinking about the woman who ran away last time. The blonde noblewoman's smirk widened. I see. Don't worry, the punishment will be over soon. Frey's gaze snapped back to the two beaten girls, his eyes cold. Irina. She flinched at the sound of her name. He took another step forward, his overwhelming aura pressing down on her like a crushing weight. Why did you run away last time? The brunette girl, still clutching her stomach, sobbed. I can't do something as horrible as that. She forced herself between Frey and Irina, trembling. Frey's gaze flickered over her, unimpressed. I see. So you can do everything except foolish things. The blonde noblewoman beside him scoffed. How vulgar. One of the brutes chuckled. Interesting. Frey let out a small laugh, his gaze settling back on Irina. Then, Irina, how about this? He tilted his head, his smirk widening. The winner of the midterm test gets to decide what happens to the loser. Anything they want. He let out a low laugh, his tone dripping with amusement. That way it's fair, right? Irina's eyes widened in horror. The game had already begun. A gamble with fate. I can't trust you. The brown-haired girl screamed without hesitation, her voice laced with fear and desperation. Frey rubbed his temple, sighing. I wasn't asking you. His crimson eyes glowed under the dim alley light. I'm asking Irina. Or, he took a step forward, his presence suffocating. Will you fight me instead? The girl's face went pale. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She knew the truth. Facing him was impossible. Irina clenched her fists, biting her lip so hard it nearly bled. Her friend had protected her all this time, only to be dragged into this mess because of her weakness. She hated it. She hated feeling powerless. With fierce determination, she screamed, Damn it, fine. I'll do it. Frey's smirk widened. Oh, you said it yourself, then. He casually stretched his arms before making an enticing offer. If you win, I'll give you 1,000 gold. He paused, his eyes gleaming with amusement. But if you lose, you become my slave. A wave of sinister energy rippled through the air, dark mist coiling around him like living shadows. The brown-haired girl burst into tears, grabbing Irina's arm in desperation. Please don't do this. You can't beat him. Frey ignored her, reaching into his jacket. A pendant glimmered as he pulled it out. A skull-shaped amulet crafted from obsidian, eerie red veins pulsing through it. I see. Then let's make it official. His tone was casual, yet undeniably menacing. He dangled the amulet before Irina, its ominous glow reflecting in her widened eyes. I'll take a death oath with you. A tense silence fell over the alley. Even the brutes, once laughing, stood frozen, their gazes locked onto the artifact. Irina's breath hitched. A death oath. The contract bound the souls of both parties. If either broke their word, they would die. Frey extended the pendant toward her. You commoners are quick to break promises. After all, Irina's body stiffened. Her fingers dug in her palm, nails biting into skin as she hugged the trembling brown-haired girl tightly. What did you just say? She snapped, fury burning in her exhausted gaze. Her friend continued pleading, her voice cracking. Irina, please. You can't. He's too strong. Irina gently patted the girl's head, her touch soft yet resolute. It's fine. I just have to crush him. She grabbed the skull-shaped amulet, and the moment her fingers closed around it, a crimson glow erupted. A single drop of sweat rolled down her cheek. Frey grinned. I see. He pulled out an identical amulet from his jacket. As he and Irina brought them together, the skulls' mouths opened wide. From within, chains shaped like jagged daggers shot forward, piercing straight into their chests. Neither fell, neither bled. Yet, the feeling was unmistakable, a binding curse far deeper than any physical wound. Irina gasped, clutching her chest. Frey, on the other hand, didn't even flinch. He leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you know what happens if you break this oath? His smirk deepened. If you do, you'd better prepare your own coffin. The blonde noblewoman in the background shivered in excitement, her breath hitching. Even though it's life or death, he didn't hesitate for even a second. Her face flushed, admiration swelling in her chest. Lord Frey, you truly are the most special person in the world. Meanwhile, the brutes gawked at him, astonished. Did he really just put his life on the line for a commoner? Frey turned to the blonde noblewoman, his gaze sharp. That's right. You lot, don't lay a hand on these two anymore. She smiled, bowing slightly. Understood. From now on, we'll leave everything to Lord Frey. Frey smirked, turning away. But before he left, he spoke one last time. I refuse to use others for my goals. So you'd better follow my words. As he walked away, his thoughts churned. I successfully paired up with Irina and handled all the annoying flies. He cast a glance at her, watching as she struggled to stand, still cradling the sobbing brown-haired girl. A system screen appeared before his eyes. Ding! Irina Filliard. Status. Mana depletion. Severe. TCH. The problem is, I have to lose to her, but she's too weak to put up a fight right now. Another chime echoed. Ding! False villain points plus 500. Achievement unlocked. Life or death, fly extermination. Before he could dismiss the screen, another system notification popped up. Ding! New. The skill store has unlocked additional options due to the accumulation of false villain points. Frey raised an eyebrow. Oh, that's convenient. He opened the skill store, and a new list of abilities appeared before him. Skill store LV.2. Mana transfer LV.1. 800 points. Transfer mana to a target through physical contact. Repeated use may cause mana depletion or fainting. A grin stretched across his face. If she's too weak from mana depletion, then I'll just give her my mana. His crimson eyes gleamed with wicked amusement. The pieces were falling into place, and the game had only just begun.